So, were you taught that also? Turn the other cheek?
No, that wasn't a part of that wasn't a part of my upbringing. But again, we were new disciples. But honestly, I'm under that old covenant, man, where your dad and uncles told you, man, if you let somebody whoop you out there, you get another one.
We're gonna get another one in here.
Home.
That's
So
right.
that was a principle I'm still embracing as an adult.
Yeah. No, I distinctly remember my dad pulling me aside and say, "Did you win?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I got sent home for fighting. He's like, "But did you win though?"
Mm-hmm.
So there's a component here. One of the things that my parents did teach us was, so when somebody does something to you, it could be something an offense or whatever, but they have done something to you. They may apologize, and the response to the apology is generally, it's okay.
Yeah,
that's what society has come up with as the norm. And my dad was like, never say that. My dad said, you can say I forgive you, you can say thank you, but never say
it's okay.
It's okay.
Life can be fast-paced, strenuous, and flat-out overwhelming. Life transitions and taboo topics can make it hard to catch your breath. Welcome to Breathe, a podcast that enables you to slow down, get your bearings, and engage in real conversations where no topic is off limits. Breathe is presented by Breath of Life, hosted by David Person and speaker-director Pastor Debleaire Snell.
Welcome to Breathe. You know it's a Monday.
Hey, it's a Monday.
The pastors are here.
Yes, indeed.
Pastor Snell,
Yes, indeed.
Nugent.
Hey,
I'm
Yes,
David
indeed.
Person. Good to
Yeah.
be with you. As always, we are in the month of July. And we are moving in a new direction. You know, we do this thing thematically a lot of times. And so
Yeah, give
this
them a
month's-
series.
That's
yeah,
right.
It's bingeable.
I like
binge worthy.
that. That's right. That's right. And so for July, the topic is I ain't there yet.
I ain't there yet.
I ain't there yet. We're talking about the hard parts of Christianity.
Yeah.
That if we're all honest, we ain't there.
Just ain't there yet.
Some things.
Some things.
So,
yeah.
One of those things that we're going to start off with, and I can relate to this growing up on the south side of Chicago.
My Lord.
Turning the other cheek.
Ooh.
Right. Turning the other cheek.
My dad was a faithful churchgoer every Sabbath. I don't remember my dad missing a Sabbath. And very engaged in church. But when it came to turning the other cheek, he wasn't there.
That
yet.
wasn't a part of his ministry, huh?
And that's what he taught me.
No.
He's
Yeah.
like, we just kind of skipped. We just sort of sidestepped that in our house. He's like, somebody hits you,
Right.
you hit them
And
back.
Yeah.
And that's how I grew up.
Yeah.
And so I had a couple of fights growing up.
Yeah.
My.
And I will say, no disrespect to the Almighty God, Jesus, who gave us the turn the other cheek instruction. But I will say, instead of turning my cheek, once I punched the other cheek.
Punch the other cheek, huh?
It seemed like everything got resolved.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess that's one way to resolve it if you're lucky.
Yeah.
Hey, we being all the way real today.
And that may not always work. I grant that. Sometimes it keeps going and it escalates.
Well, it's so funny because that's how most people teach their children.
Yeah.
And then you don't really try to encourage them to implement the turn the other cheek thing till they get grown. So it's almost kind of counterintuitive. You're raised to do one thing, and then like now you have to try to course correct all of your childhood axioms as an adult.
And then you have others who may have tried to teach turn the other cheek, but in their actions they did not.
Yeah, they didn't.
And so a child usually catches what you do, not necessarily
not
what you say.
That's right.
And so many people have told me I'll turn the other cheek, but that's not what I saw.
Yeah.
So,
and sometimes that's a convenient thing to say.
It is.
If we're going to be honest. We say it in moments of peace and tranquility.
absolutely.
In the moment.
In the moment, sometimes we're like, whatever.
Yeah.
So, were you taught that also? Turn the other cheek?
No, that wasn't a part of that wasn't a part of my upbringing. But again, we were new disciples. But honestly, I'm under that old covenant, man, where your dad and uncles told you, man, if you let somebody whoop you out there, you get another one.
We're gonna get another one in
get
here.
home.
That's
So
right.
that was a principle I'm I'm still embracing as an adult.
Yeah. No, I distinctly remember my dad pulling me aside and say, "Did you win?"
Mm-hmm.
You know, because I got sent home for fighting. And he's like, "But did you win though?" So there's a component here. One of the things that my parents did teach us was, so when somebody does something to you, it could be something an offense or whatever, but they have done something to you. They may apologize, and the response to the apology is generally, it's okay.
Yeah,
that's what society has come up with as the norm. My dad was like, never say that. My dad said, you can say I forgive you, you can say thank you, but never say
it's okay.
It's okay.
What you did was okay
because it wasn't okay.
Because it wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and I thought that was.
I agree with that actually.
But is that a form of turning the other cheek? How does that, you know what I'm saying? Does that fit in there, or is that being kind? Is that because somebody's expecting you to say it's okay? They want to feel a little bit better. They came to you and apologized.
For me, I would say I'm with your pops. I'm with your pops. I think saying thank you or I forgive you
is much better.
But unless I truly feel okay,
there it is.
I'm not going to say it's okay.
Yeah.
So this is the thing with the whole turn the other cheek scenario, because isn't it calling us to do what we don't necessarily feel is okay?
Okay.
In part,
that's a good point.
But I think even with that, I think if there's been enough resolve in the apology.
Understood.
So you don't have to say it's okay.
Got it.
But I think if there's been enough resolve, you can say we're okay.
We're okay.
I like that.
I like
I think that. I like that. May be
we're okay is a good compromise.
That allows you to move forward.
Yeah.
With clarity, but it's clear the action
was not okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I might even say, depending on the person and depending upon what happened, I might be like, yo, we're good.
Yeah.
But you better not do that.
There you go. Yeah.
Again, south side of Chicago coming out. I'm not gonna lie.
Hey.
Yeah.
Listen, I didn't know. I didn't know a person was from Cabrini Green.
But I think I think context for these things really matters.
It does.
Because I think that there are some who believe, by and large, when Jesus in Matthew 5 talks about if your neighbor strikes you on one cheek, you turn and give them the other one.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think there's a context for what he is communicating.
Okay.
So you remember, when you got to read all of Matthew 5, because he says, you have heard it said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I say, so on and so forth. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of times what Jesus is doing is he is making right something that went left. So like when he says you have heard it said eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, that was actually a part of like the ceremonial law.
Yeah.
Like there were a number of like civil laws that God gave through Moses to the people, so on and so forth. And really these civil laws really had the same purpose as the civil laws in our time. There were certain things that were put forth as a deterrent to crime or certain actions. So that there were times where if you took someone's life, you would give your life as a deterrent, you know what I'm saying, for crime or to show sanctity for life. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because just like any fallen culture, what we will take a law that was meant for good. Twist it for our own purposes.
Yeah.
So like essentially kind of what, those of that time had done. They had taken this principle of eye for an eye tooth for a tooth. And they had essentially leveraged a law that was supposed to be a deterrent from harming others. And it empowered them to embrace a course of vengeance and seeking revenge.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
And that's kind of really what Jesus is addressing, saying that as children of God, all right, we're not going to mangle the law. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to distort the law to fulfill our natural instincts or even our fleshly desires. Mm-hmm. So literally what he does in many instances, he actually uses hyperbole to kind of symbolically to communicate certain things. So, somebody gives you one cheek, you turn around and give them the other. Or we talked about how, man, if your eye causes you to sin, pluck it out. Right. If your hand causes you sin, cut it off. Right. But I think these are kind of, almost kind of hyperbolic images to kind of help us align with the true values of the kingdom. And so I don't think it's just, necessarily just a literal, all right, man, I'm just going to let somebody slap me around. Yeah. But I think what it is, it's a call away from vengeance culture. And
got it. Getting even.
Like getting even and retribution.
Yeah.
And I just think that if we're going to really understand it in context, we've got to really understand that it's a shift away from, all right, embracing the values and the customs of the world and to kind of choosing a slightly different form of warfare.
So what I really hear you saying is that my pops had it right.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, because I wasn't seeking retribution.
Yeah.
I was seeking to
defend yourself.
Stand up and defend myself against a bully.
Yeah. Because honestly, when you look at the Old Testament is filled with wars.
Yeah.
Where, even the Bible talks about there's a time for peace.
Yeah.
And there's a time to fight.
That's right.
But I just think in its larger context is just kind of moving away from the retribution as an axiom or as a practice.
And I would also say this is not an indictment of self-defense.
Yeah.
Right?
Agreed.
So, right?
Agreed.
Yeah, correct.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. Because self-defense, you're trying to, at least protect your own, protect yourself, or protect your home, your family.
Yeah.
And that's, again, there are some of these things are a natural instinct in us as people, as humans, but especially as men.
Yeah.
I would say, but even from a mother's standpoint.
Man.
You
the mother bear metaphor.
Come on.
Yeah.
You do something to that child, you need to watch out.
Yeah.
And I think that those but as long as it's not a vengeance thing, I think that's where.
But I think though, so like, all right, let's just say we extrapolate this principle, and where does this show up in most of our Christian life? So even when you talk about self-defense,
It's
David.
so true.
All right, so most of bottom line is I hadn't had anybody step to me and hit me in one of my, you know what I'm saying? That's not really a part of my rhythm.
That's good.
However, there
yeah.
are consistent spaces where there is that temptation to try to defend my character or my reputation or my perspective or what people may be saying about me, or to then go back at others the way they may be coming at me. So I just think maybe in your work context, there may be scenarios where somebody's coming for you when you didn't send for them, where they tell a lie on you, and your temptation is to go back at them in kind. There may be a scenario in a family dynamic where people are just moving
context.
in a certain direction, and the temptation is, man, okay, you hit me on this cheek emotionally, I'm going to bruise yours emotionally.
Yeah.
And I think so, like, as opposed to, okay, the masculine, all right, self-defense, all right, physical harm, because I don't really think that's where we live.
No,
that's not
you're
really,
right.
By and large, unless you're in prison, that's not really
It's not where you're getting
going to be your day-to-day reality.
Yeah.
But I think where these kind of offenses really show up, they're probably going to show up consistently on your job, in your family, maybe in your church. And I think the decision we have to kind of decide ahead of that moment is, how am I going to respond?
Yeah, that makes me think about family situations that I know of.
Yeah.
In my own family, without calling out anybody by name, but where people hold grudges.
Come on, talk about it.
And won't speak literally for years. And I've seen that. I've experienced it. I've watched it up close and personal. And I think that's analogous to what you're talking about, and this whole idea of not turning the other cheek and seeking retribution.
Yeah.
The very idea of shunning, not speaking, that is a form of that.
It is.
I think it is.
And so I think the larger idea is for the believer. It's honestly, I think it's as tough as electing not to respond to a physical act of violence. It is choosing to always be the bigger person.
Yeah.
Like that's really core to it. That says, okay, even if they don't speak to me, I'm not going to react like that with them. It's like, all right, they say negative things about me. Like, this is part of my reaction. So, like, it's funny because and to be clear, like, I don't live in the comment section at all. And most people are very kind and encouraging, but there are just some people that, for whatever reason, they just don't like the way I move or my approach of it. And they're very, and they'll say stuff online that they will never say standing kind of right in front of you kind of deal. Right. So on and so forth. But I think that the key is saying, like, listen, oh, man, and it's funny because I'm like, whoa, I know some stuff about you that if I begin I begin becoming liberal, that could really harm you. Wow. But I'm going to choose to be the bigger person. You see what I'm saying? And I just think that there are times where I just think as humans, as people who are wounded and suffer offense and feel slighted, there's a time where you want to defend yourself. You want to go back at that person. Mercy. You want to harm them in the way that they've harmed you, even if it's not physically. And I just think that, Michelle Obama said it best, man. And it's, it's undergirded in scripture. Like when they go low, we stay high. Come on. And but it is by no means an easy thing to do.
No, not at all.
It is certainly not a natural thing to do, which is why, man, we're kind of like, man, some of us can listen to you saying, Pastor, I'm hearing you, but I ain't there yet.
Because when they go low, we go lower.
I want to go back to something you said, Pastor Snell. You talked about people not speaking to each other and how one person, let's say, is the initiator of that. How the onus in a Christian context on the other person is to be the better person. But what does that really mean? Because if a person isn't speaking to you, isn't it a waste of time and energy to try to speak to them or to try to engage with them?
Yeah. So it's funny. Do you know when somebody's not speaking to you, is it really because they don't want to speak to you? Or is it because they're really wanting your attention? You kind of get what I'm saying? Like,
I totally agree.
The truth is, if you, again, chose to be, there have been some scenarios where some people have felt a certain way. And it's actually happened both ways, where they felt a certain way and they were showing me the cold shoulder and they were in their feelings about something I did or something they perceived I did. And when I just, kind of went up and put my arm around them and said, hey, da-da-da-da. Hey, listen, I know you and your feelings, but, da-da-da. And it was funny because it was that initiation.
Okay.
I mean, now it's funny because they were being as petty as could be, as small as a mouse. You know what I'm saying? But it was that initiation. So it wasn't really that they did not want to speak to me. It was just that they were so wounded, or offended, or whatever. They were kind of maybe in a defense posture of in some ways. And then there have been some times where, like, I have been on the petty small side, and someone chose to be bigger, and it wasn't because I did not want relationship with them, but whatever offense had metastasized in such a way that, smallness got the best of me.
Man, that's a great
and I was moving in that way. That's happened in marriage. There've been times where Jenna's the bigger person and I'll testify and it wasn't, I didn't want, but it's just, she chose to be the bigger person. So I'm saying, I just think that sometimes, because like even it's very 7-year-old. Like, I'm going to see you, and I'm just not going to speak. I see you, but I'm not going to speak. You see what I'm saying? It's just because there is, in many cases, not all, because I know what you're saying. So I think it's the difference with just somebody's just avoiding my space altogether. But like, all right, I know we got to be in this space, but I'm just not going to speak. It's just kind of a petulant way to kind of show my displeasure in some way, shape, or form. And so I just think it's that call to be bigger and more mature. And I think, honestly, and I think one of the reasons Jesus gave us this admonition, because I think in conflicts or interpersonal bouts, we think in the context of win, lose. But really, we got to really look at it in the context of resolve. That's good. I just think unless somebody's willing to be bigger, there is never any resolve. And it's funny because, okay, and this is the tough part, because like, see, when you go low, right, and you choose that path, do you realize you just gotta, it's only going to dissolve. It's only going to keep getting lower. and lower and lower. And then all of a sudden you find yourself operating in a space that is so far outside of yourself or who you've wanted to become. Yeah. And the truth is, there's some people, man, and this is why I just think you got to stay high. There's some people, because especially like even religious people, church people, even if you're kind of a grimy church person, right? Even grimy church people have a limit. There's only so far they want to go with that. But there's some people, they don't have no limit. No. You gonna have to keep going lower and lower and lower in order to abide with them on a certain form of conflict. So like it's actually healthier to just come up. I tell this story from time to time. You know, there'd be times I would go outside when the kids were much smaller and we'd be washing the car. And so they would want to help, but they didn't really want to wash. They just want to throw water and play in the mud. And so there'd be times where they'll, you know, splash something on me and I'll splash something back on them, and they'll splash something on me and splash something on them. And at a certain point, I'm like, all right, I'm done, right? Because like there is a level of dirtiness that they're willing to embrace.
Yes.
I don't really want to get all the way dirty. I don't mind a little bit, but I don't want to get all the way in the mud. They ready to roll around
in that
see what I'm saying?
Come on.
And one of the things I think you ultimately learn is that you can't play in the mud with somebody who came to get dirty. Like this is what they here for. Like this is where I dwell in the mud. You just want to get a little dirty. You see what I'm saying? And I just think just at the end of the day, there's a point where you realize if we keep moving like this, there's not going to be a winner. No. There's just going to be two big fat losers. Absolutely. And I just, you just make it up in your mind and say, I don't have time for that. I don't have space for that kind of energy. And there is I think it's Romans, I think it's 13, where Paul just kind of makes this statement. And I try to live by it imperfectly. Where he just says, man, listen, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with all men.
Oh, yeah.
I can't determine what you're going to do, how you're going to respond, how you're going to react. But as far as it depends on me. I'm just going to do my best to live at peace with all men. And I just think that has to be a guiding principle. I did also just want to share this, verse here, from 1 Peter, where he says, man, listen, do not repay evil with evil or insult with insult. Right. On the contrary, repay evil with blessing, because to this you were called, so that you may inherit a blessing. And I just think part of it is just realizing Christian, because later Paul talks about the weapons of our warfare. They're not carnal. It's not just that, but our weapons are spiritual. Yeah. And so, like even in Romans 12, there in verse 20, he talks about how, like, man, when you repay evil with good, and you show love in the face of kindness, or maturity in the face of immaturity, it's actually a greater form of warfare. He kind of likens the imagery. It's like heaping hot coals of fire. Wow. You know what I'm saying? Which is kind of devastating when you think about it. Exactly. Like, man, but he's like, that's what kindness in the face of foolishness, that's the result of it. And so I think the idea is two things. One, it's resolved, but I think a big part of it is not just winning or defeating the offender, winning against the offender or defeating the offender. It's winning them. So winning them, not beating them, but winning their hearts. And so I just think that's the space where, again, we may not be there yet, but we want to be striving and moving in that direction.
That's good.
One thing, if I can just raise this as a final point for us before we run out of time here in the next few minutes. At the root of this challenge of turning the other cheek, it seems to me it's pride.
Oh yeah.
And that's the real issue.
That's the issue.
That we are not.
I ain't no punk.
Right.
Yeah. You're not gonna do me like that.
Right.
It's pride. It's for sure. It's
how
for sure.
dare you?
Yeah.
Well,
And in fact, a lot of the response is because that I don't want to be seen a certain way. I don't know what it was in the news. One of these heads of state, they were getting off the plane, and the wife.
Oh, Macron. Talking about the French president. Macron.
She didn't know. She didn't know the door was open.
I saw that. He showed it.
Now the truth is, all those who saw the scene said this is not the first time that has happened.
Of course,
No, isn't it? It's just that now we've seen it.
Yeah.
And now that we've seen it, he has to respond as because he doesn't want to be disrespected. It's a pride thing.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's a pride thing. So yeah, you're absolutely correct. That pride piece will come in and cause you to do a lot more. Now, not to say that he shouldn't, have some pride. I think he probably needs to have some pride in private too.
Right.
But I'm saying in the context of what we're talking about here, in terms of turning the other cheek, a lot of the response or the unwillingness to go high is because I don't want to be seen a certain way.
Yeah. Can I throw a couple things with us?
Sure.
The one. So this is why I think it takes strength to kind of turn the other cheek, and this is probably not just physical, but emotionally, spiritually as well, because Jesus. This is actually what he modeled. Like on the cross, actually, as he's being beaten and spit upon, that's actually what he does. He literally turns the other cheek. But this is the strength portion of it. It is when he literally has the capacity to annihilate those who are his enemies in that moment.
Yeah.
But he chooses the harder, difficult path out of love. And so I think, and this is where that Romans 12, the renewing of your mind kicks in. It is seeing the world differently when it comes down to stuff like this.
Wow.
Because it's not, it's one thing to turn the other cheek when there is a foe that you feel like you can't defeat. That's not really love or humility. It's just self-interest. It's preservation.
Preservation.
But I think, man, where the maturity is required is when, man, you have the ammunition, the information, tools to bring harm that's greater than what was brought to you, and yet you elect not to do it. Like, that's the way of Jesus. Because, this principle really only applies when you really have the power or the authority to react in a way that is detrimental to somebody else. If you don't, then it's just self-preservation. So I just think that's where we've got to really kind of look at it. And it requires the renewing of your mind. Again, this is going to be counter to your instincts, your upbringing, kind of what feels natural. But this is why, man, this is not going to be born out of like, I need to change my behavior. You got to say, Holy Spirit, I need you to do a work inside of me. I need there to be a shifting of values, ideology. I need you to do a work in my heart, because you won't ever really get here just by yourself.
Absolutely.
Or just moving according to your flesh. And so I just want to just kind of throw that out there. I just think, as opposed to just saying, all right, I need to be strong. No, I just think you want to daily die to self.
Right.
Invite more of the Spirit to live inside of your heart, because there's got to be a change on the level of the software. See, I knew he could do this. There's got to be a software. There's got to be a software update or a software upgrade, or else that behavior it'll change when people are looking. But then, like your boy's wife, when you think anybody else around, you just go revert back to the same old behavior.
Love it. Yeah. Software upgrade.
Software. I like that, man. Yeah. It denotes that we're striving.
Yeah.
Because the truth is, the statement "I ain't there yet" you've stated where you are. But now that you know where you are, it behooves you to try and
move in a different
direction.
direction.
The software can't update itself.
Come on
the
now.
publisher.
Yes, the publisher. Come on, Doc.
We gotta give him
David is on fire today.
Now, I don't want to hear that in the sermon now, unless I get some credit.
you might hear that one, brother.
Hey, listen, I'll be like, I heard a wise man say that's how you cite your sources.
That's how you.
I love it.
That's good.
All right. I ain't there yet.
I ain't there
That's
yet.
what we're dealing with this month.
Come
Those
on.
tough parts of Christianity that, if we're honest, are really hard to live up to, hard to implement. But we're saying we need to confront them.
Yeah.
We need to embrace them and figure out how to implement them and to understand them and implement them in our lives.
That's it.
So, we are glad that you're joining us this month. We hope this has been a great conversation for you. Don't forget, we always accept suggestions.
Yeah. Send them
drop
in.
them in the comments. Or shoot us an email about topics or issues that you want us to tackle here on Breathe.
And Dave, I got to squeeze this one last idea in.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No,
I hate
you
to do
good.
this.
You good.
But in terms of this idea of turning the other cheek, there has to be a particular conviction that you have. And it's a conviction that God will fight my battles.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
So that's why we have a different warfare.
Yeah.
The reason I'm not trying to defend myself is realizing that, man, you remember God through Jeremiah says, man, he who touches you touches the apple of my eye.
My goodness.
So I just think it's realizing that, man, there is agency and there is forces at work for you.
Yeah.
That can perform a work that is greater than any retribution you can ever perform for yourself.
I think that's important.
I just needed to squeeze that in.
Come on.
Because for somebody, this is not practical, it's not connecting. But if you believe that you're God's child, and as Romans 8 says, if God be for us,
who can be
against us? Let him fight those battles. God says, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. I will repay.
Ooh.
I think that's important.
No, I'm glad. I'm glad you got that in there. That's critical.
That's important. Next week on Breathe, next Monday, we're going to move from turning the other cheek to another challenging topic in Christianity.
Yeah.
Another, I ain't there yet.
Ain't there yet.
Entertaining strangers.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Now you may be thinking about that in a specific scriptural context.
Yeah.
Which, we'll get into that.
Yeah.
But there's more to it.
There's more to it.
It's gonna be good.
It's gonna be good. Entertaining strangers. Uh-oh.
I ain't
there yet.
Ain't there yet.
Especially in this day and time.
In this day and time.
Where stranger danger is
It's
at a
different.
whole nother level. Than what we
Yeah.
were taught as children.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Yeah.
And don't forget, no matter how challenging life is or how much opportunity life presents, you can approach it the same way. Stop, pray, and breathe.
Breathe is produced by David Person for Breath of Life. Executive producer is Debleaire Snell, and sound engineer is Kirk Nugent. Audio episodes of Breathe can be found on Apple, Spotify, or Google Podcast platforms. For video episodes and extra content, check out the Breath of Life YouTube channel. Breath of Life is faith-based content, resources, and programs from a contemporary urban perspective for those looking for hope and guidance. We believe that every breath we take is a testimony that God is consistent, that He loves us, and has a plan for our lives.